Are you worried about trans people taking over women's spaces? Are you one of those who are not transphobic, but just concerned that the trans movement may erase women and threaten women's rights? If so, I'm trying to understand where your fear comes from. A lot of the controversy is around issues that to me really seem like non-issues, that are purposely taken out of context and blown out of proportion. Inclusive language seems to be an emotional topic and a big problem to many people in these discussions. I've recently seen videos from Alexis Blake, who I first thought was just another grifter, but watching her more, she actually seems like a genuinely lovely person. But I'd like to comment on some of her takes that I find to be non-issues that are really only made into issues by the right-wing media. However, a lot of these women in her comments seem to feel validated by her takes, which is great, except that I think it would be even better if people could see that these really are non-issues, and how trans people and trans activists are really not trying to erase women. I cannot put into words really how heartbreaking it is to be diminished every day as a woman. I feel like I'm being erased. I sank into a depression over Dylan Mulvaney's public mockery and abuse. So many trans people are coming for us, sometimes just for existing.
Transgenderism must be eradicated from public life entirely.
Day 12 of being a girl, and I just picked up some tampons, and y'all are probably thinking, Dylan, where are you gonna put those? They're not for me.
Like, if you seriously feel like trans women are diminishing you every day just by making some videos about their own life, you should really get off the internet for your own mental health. Get a hobby or something and get a grasp of the real world.
I just had to take a break because I was getting genuinely upset by the next one, and I understand why women are getting so upset with this term, womb carriers. Bottom line, it is vile, it is bullying women, and it is becoming a slur.
I do agree that womb carrier sounds a bit weird. I'd prefer a person with a uterus, but the only context where I've seen it used was in an essay about reproductive rights of Native Americans, written by a Native American Two-Spirit person. Some Native American and other indigenous peoples have recognized more than two genders way before Westerners have, and I think that in this context, only Native American women and other Native American people who have uteruses can say if they feel a Native American can use the term womb carrier when referring to their own people. I don't think it really is anyone else's place to criticize it. Every other context I've seen it used have either been comments criticizing the essay, or rather its publisher's tweets with quotes from the essay, or TERFs and right-wingers using it when they say what they think trans activists say. Seriously, who's using it and where? This seems like making a big deal out of something that isn't even happening. The purpose of inclusive language isn't to replace the word woman. Those descriptive words are meant to be used in medical language and in policymaking in order to more accurately refer to the groups a specific policy applies to. No one will talk about you personally and tell someone, I met a nice person with uterus today. This is not how these terms are used.
Birthing people, really? Come on. It just makes you sound like a weird object that like, you're a vessel and nothing more. Like birthing people just sounds weird.
When it comes to birthing person, birther, birth giver, these words are not meant to take away your motherhood or your womanhood, and I can't believe anyone actually thinks that. You personally can still be called a mother if you wish to, even if in medical guidelines or policies a more specific term is used.
Do you know what the leading cause of death for pregnant people is?
Pregnant people?
Mm-hmm.
Mothers? Women?
If you'd like to call them mothers, not all of them are mothers, but if you'd like to call them that.
What are they if they're not mothers?
They're pregnant people.
What people other than mothers are pregnant?
Does it bother you to use inclusive language?
I prefer to use precise language.
Distinguishing mother from birthing person makes sense not only if the person giving birth is a trans man or a non-binary person, but also if there is a couple with two mothers, but only one of them is giving birth, or when it comes to surrogacy or adoption. In some situations, it is important to write official policies and laws so that they take into consideration that in some cases the person giving birth can be legally male, because that can affect pregnant trans men's access to healthcare. And in the end, it's the baby that suffers if a trans man doesn't have adequate access to healthcare.
Won't somebody please think of the children?
This doesn't erase women, it just includes other people whom these issues concern.
I just left, like I'm sitting in the car. I just left a birth where the woman was in labor for 4 days. She was pushing for over an hour. She nearly lost her mind and was emotionally broken down by the end of this. But she delivered her baby. It was placed on her chest. There were tears in both her and her husband's eyes. And the husband leans in close and he whispers, "What a woman." It was a beautiful moment. And you know what would have ruined it? What a birthing person.
This is such a stupid example. I'm assuming the husband knows the wife identifies as a woman, so of course he can call the wife a woman. That has nothing to do with how those words are used or intended to be used, and you are willfully ignorant if you pretend not to understand that.
I haven't got a brain, only straw.
Some cisgender people, especially cis women, from what I've seen, seem to believe cis is a slur because they don't personally like it. I'm sorry to let you know, but that's not how slurs work.
Hey, do not come into the studio and call me a cis woman. Otherwise, I would
call you a cis woman.
Cis women, do not use that term. Otherwise, I will eject you from the chair. A woman is a woman. I don't want to hear that again from your mouth.
If a white person doesn't like the word white, that doesn't make white a slur. It doesn't make it offensive to call that person white. Or if a heterosexual person feels that heterosexual or straight is a slur, they still aren't slurs. You are still heterosexual, and that's just a fact.
And facts don't care about your feelings.
I don't personally use the word cisgender, so if I'm referring to a man walking down the street, I'm not going to go and say, "That's cisgender man walking down the street."
Yeah, and neither does anyone else. That's not how the word is used. And how do you even know that the random person walking down the street is cis, and why would that be relevant? You miss the whole point of the discussion when you make these arguments using examples that have nothing to do with how these words are actually used, in contexts where they are actually relevant.
Why should my identity have to change in order for you to embrace your identity?
It doesn't.
Why does what I call myself have to change because of what you call yourself?
Well, it doesn't.
Why does one have to negate out the other one? Why can't trans women call themselves trans women and I still call myself a woman? And you call themselves trans woman. Why can't I still call myself a woman? Why do I have to be a cis?
This is not what the discussion is about. It's not about what you call yourself. It's about you trying to restrict the language trans people are allowed to use when discussing their own issues. Cis is a prefix, just like homo, hetero, bi, and it literally just means non-trans. You don't have to identify as cis to be cis, any more than a white person needs to identify as white to be white. That term is only used in contexts where the distinction from trans people is relevant, and in most contexts you can just be women or men. It doesn't change your identity. There really is no rational reason to be offended by a word that has no malicious intention behind it, no history of oppression connected to that word, or the group described by it, or other characteristics of a slur. Nobody cares about what you call yourself. Inclusive language and the word cisgender are only used when they are relevant to the situation.
Why do women always have to be the sacrificial lamb? Because in this cis world, in this trans world and all that kind of stuff, all the changes that are being made are changes that people want to be made, are changes that women have to make. I don't see or hear them saying something about a man and their parts or changing this, changing that. Women always seem to have to be the sacrificial lamb for everything, for everyone else.
For some reason, people think that it's mainly cis women who are called cis or referred to with words that are inclusive of trans men or non-binary people. But I do use terms like people with prostates if having a prostate is relevant to the context.
Most people with prostates will end up with some kind of, well, maybe that's not quite true, but at least a large number of people who have prostates by the end of their lives may not die of prostate cancer, but they might die with it.
And cis men are called cis men too. It's not about erasing women, it's not about erasing anybody. What really makes me sad is to see black women who don't have solidarity for black trans women, even though trans women of color are one of the most vulnerable groups of people.
One of the deadliest epidemics in the US is violence against black transgender people. The Human Rights Campaign says at least 44 trans or gender non-conforming people were murdered in 2020. Making it the deadliest year on record. At least 47% of the victims were black women. In 2019, 91% were black women. And that's just who we know of. Many victims go unreported, while others are misgendered.
Malaysia is one of at least 18 trans women of color who've been killed this year alone. The real number likely higher. The data shows the trans identity of nearly 3/4 of victims is initially left out from police and media reports. The risks are something that these trans youth face daily. They come here to Casa Ruby, a safe haven in the nation's capital. Many who seek shelter here say they've been kicked out of their homes for being trans.
When you've been rejected by everyone that you supposedly love, you come here to find love and support.
If you don't find that nurturing that you need to survive, more than likely you will die. And most of us died before we're 30.
Do you think people just choose that kind of life for fun? Do you think men just decide to be women to get all the perks of womanhood and none of the downsides? Do you think people would choose to be on lifelong medication and to go through painful surgeries, risk losing their families, their jobs and their social circles if it wasn't something they absolutely needed to do to be able to live their lives?
Bud Light sent me possibly the best gift ever, a can with my face on it.
I only found out recently who Dylan Mulvaney is, and looking at other people's comments, it seems that I'm not the only one who has only come across her because right-wingers have singled her out as a target of their hate.
Grandpa's feeling a little frisky today.
So seeing people use their dislike of some trans influencer many trans people hardly know of to justify their hate towards the whole trans community, as if the community had chosen her as a representative, is completely insane. It's clear that the right-wing outrage has brought her more attention than she ever could have received without it.
I will say, I think that the obsession that a lot of conservatives have with Dylan is very overblown and strange. I can't log on to my Twitter without people. It's nothing from conservative accounts but Dylan Mulvaney. And a lot of these conservatives that claim to want him to go away and don't want him to be getting all these brand deals, right? You're the reason why. All these brand deals, Bud Light, Nike, the blender thing, are all coming to Dylan because, wow, who would have thought that obsessively talking about every brand deal Dylan gets and making sure to repost the advertisement itself and show the products doesn't stop an influencer from getting more brand deals. Do you know how any of this works? I don't understand. And y'all can call me a hypocrite. I'm not trying to stop Dylan from getting any bags. I'm reacting to Dylan getting these bags. I don't care. Like, if Dylan wants to get these sponsorships, every influencer gets sponsorships. I have an ad in this video.
This is one of the few things I actually agree on with Blair White.
The estimated hold time is now less than 90.
I don't really follow TikTok since I find most of it kinda cringe. And I've just watched some of Dylan's controversial content mainly to find out what people are going crazy about.
I am Eloise. I am 6. I'm a city child. I live at the Plaza Hotel, which is huge and wonderful and très elegant, especially at Christmas time.
I do find some of it kinda cringe. Not more cringe than a lot of other content on TikTok. But not really the kind of content I enjoy. But I can't understand all the hate she gets. If you don't like her take on womanhood, just don't watch. Because guess what? The controversy around her just makes her even more popular. But also, if your womanhood is so fragile that it can be single-handedly destroyed by a silly, annoying, but kinda sweet theater kid who happens to be a trans woman, maybe you need to do some self-reflection on why other people making content about their own journey offends you so much.
Why does Dylan Mulvaney get brand deals? A. Brands want to reach her over 10 million followers. B. To erase women. C. To piss off conservatives. D. Because of the woke agenda.
Grandpa's feeling a little frisky.
It must be D, the woke agenda.
There are many trans women I would rather see having a big audience and getting all those sponsor deals. But you know, this is capitalism, and brands give her deals because she is popular. They don't have a woke agenda, just a financial agenda.
What transpired from that video was more bullying and transphobia than I could have ever imagined. And I should have made this video months ago, but I didn't. And I was scared, and I was scared of more backlash, and I felt personally guilty for what transpired. So I patiently waited for things to get better. But surprise, they haven't really. And I was waiting for the brand to reach out to me, but they never did. And for months now, I've been scared to leave my house. I have been ridiculed in public. I've been followed. For a company to hire a trans person and then not publicly stand by them is worse, in my opinion, than not hiring a trans person at all, because it gives customers permission to be as transphobic and hateful as they want. And the hate doesn't end with me. It has serious and grave consequences for the rest of our community.
Also, a paid partnership on social media really doesn't mean that she is the face of the brand. She just makes a little ad for them, just like many other social media influencers. For example, Nike has recently had paid partnerships with other influencers too, and so has Bud Light. But the one who has created them the most hype has surely been Dylan. Brands just do these things with content creators they believe have an audience that fits in their target group. Do you like every cis woman's view on womanhood? Do you like all of those social media influencers who impose stereotypical, potentially harmful, and for many people unreachable beauty standards on young women? And if you don't like them, are you mad at those women for existing? Do you boycott each company that sponsors them? Or are you able to just leave it and move on? There are plenty of cis women and cis men I don't particularly like who get big brand deals, but I wouldn't throw a tantrum over it. Also, people like to misrepresent her words, whether it's intentional misleading or just not being bothered to check any context of the things she has said or that have been said about her. I've seen people claim that she thinks she has periods, which she doesn't actually think, and you would know that if you haven't only seen that one sentence taken out of context.
Day 31 of being a girl, and I'm freaking out a little bit. I haven't gotten my period yet, okay? I'm late. And, I mean, I haven't kissed anyone in a while, but still, like, we know what happened to the Virgin Mary, okay? It's possible. In all seriousness, no, I can't get a period. But my doctor did tell me that the estrogen I'm taking can cause me to become, like, kind of hormonal, emotional, like 3 to 4 days out of the month. So watch out.
Or people claim Tampax has sponsored her.
I mean, Dylan Mulvaney is also being paid to promote Tampax, another product that they will never leave.
Which both Tampax and Dylan have denied.
So, I have some amazing news. Are you ready? I have never worked with Tampax before. The most that happened was they sent me a few boxes of tampons back in April, just in case I bumped into anyone, including yourselves, and I gave them all away. I've got a few left. And this one's really gonna blow your mind. I have never made $1 off of feminine hygiene products. Pfft, So I hope that helps you sleep better at night, knowing that.
If you wouldn't want a trans woman to hand you a tampon, just don't take it. Many others don't have a problem with getting one from a trans woman. Just let her be and move on and support the women you like. I've seen a lot of people say that they used to support trans people, but now they don't because of Dylan Mulvaney and Jeffrey Marsh, and I think it's really sad and scary if you base your opinion on an entire group of people on one or two people you don't like. Do you believe all black people are Nazi sympathizers because of Ye? Or that the black community has chosen him to speak for all of them?
There's a lot of things that I love about Hitler.
When you see a hateful or critical comment about trans people, try to replace the word trans with black, Jew, or even gay, and think about whether it would be okay to say those things about any marginalized group other than trans people.
Imagine that Michael Knowles or whoever had said, we need to eradicate Judaism. Oh my God, are you calling for genocide? No. I didn't say anything about eradicating Jews. I meant eradicate Judaism completely. Do you think we would all accept that and go, oh, okay, that's fine? He's not saying anything about Jews. He's just saying eradicate Judaism. Get rid of it completely. Oh yeah, the Anti-Defamation League would be fine with that defense.
Defending the right to safe spaces for women seems like an innocent agenda. However, demonization of a minority group based on anecdotal evidence is a dangerous path. In the recent school shooting in Nashville, the shooter was trans. That made so many people all over right-wing conservative media blame transgenderism for mass shootings. This happened despite the fact that the shooter's motive was not disclosed.
The gun control narrative is ridiculous in the sense that this person legally obtained the guns. I'm unaware what law would be passed that would have prevented this person from obtaining the guns. I'm perfectly fine with banning people who suffer from gender dysphoria from purchasing weapons. That seems to me a pretty significant symptom of an underlying mental malaise that could theoretically be a problem in terms of owning firearms. But I don't think the left believes the same thing.
There's a clear epidemic of trans or non-binary mass shooters.
We seem to be watching the rise of trans terrorism. Yesterday's massacre did not happen because of lax gun laws. Yesterday's massacre happened because of a deranged and demonic ideology that is infecting this country with the encouragement of people like Joe Biden.
And more importantly, despite the fact that there have been nearly 3,000 mass shootings in the US since 2018. In 3 of them, the shooter was trans. This means that about 0.1% of mass shooters in the US are trans. About 1% of the population is transgender. This means that being trans doesn't make it more likely to become a mass shooter. In fact, one could argue that it makes it less likely. That doesn't stop right-wingers making the argument that
guns don't kill people.
Trans folks
kill people with guns.
The statistics tell us that when it comes to politically motivated violence in 2022, every single murder was committed by a right-wing extremist.
Every single murder in America was committed by a right-wing extremist?
Every single politically motivated murder was committed by a right-wing extremist.
Are you sure about that?
I am.
Are you aware that the Tennessee shooter just recently identified as a man and she was a biological woman? Was she a right-wing extremist as well?
General Lady's time has expired. I'll allow the witness to answer the question.
So that was a shooting that happened in 2023. There is no evidence as to what ideology motivated that shooting. And what we do know is that cisgender males are responsible for the vast majority of mass shootings in this country.
If you wanted to stop murder, you would focus on the people who are committing murder. And the first thing you would do is study what murderers have in common with one another. The first thing you would do is study what murderers have in common with one another.
And we will ban men.
Consider the killings that took place on Monday in Nashville. The killer was a 28-year-old female transgenderist who shot her way into a Christian elementary school and murdered 3 9-year-olds and 3 adults. Why did she do that? We can't see the manifesto because the transgender lobby, which has far more power than you do, has pressured politicians to keep it hidden. But we can be certain what it says. Monday's victims were murdered because they were Christians. It's that simple. Transgenderists hate Christians above all.
Some people without brains do an awful lot of talking, don't they?
Gun violence is the #1 cause of death for children and teens in the US, and this was the 16th school shooting this year. But hey, why blame guns when you can blame transgenderism for the crimes mainly committed by cis men?
Somebody please think of the children!
Like I said, about 1% of the population is transgender. However, if you look at the content of conservative commentators, for example here on YouTube, it seems that half of their content is anti-trans. That gives the impression that trans issues are some major societal problems at the moment, when in fact it's just conservatives making half of their political agenda about hating 1% of the population. Think about that. Trump even admitted that he uses anti-trans rhetoric to pander to his audience.
Critical race theory, transgender insanity, and other inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content on our children. It's amazing how strongly people feel about that. You see, I'm talking about cutting taxes, people go like that. Talk about transgender, everyone goes crazy. Who would have thought 5 years ago you didn't know what the hell it was?
Personally, I don't have a strong opinion on trans women in women's sports. I think the decisions on whether trans women are allowed to compete should be based on research on exercise physiology and on actual data on how much trans women's athletic performance is affected by hormone replacement therapy. There are sports such as archery in which the average differences between men and women are small, and sports like powerlifting in which the average differences between men and women are a lot bigger. Different sets of skills and qualities are needed in different sports, and I don't think they should be all lumped together when it comes to this issue. In some sports, trans women may have more of an unfair advantage, while in others they don't. However, it is important to understand that hormones change biological functions of the body, and you can't compare cis men to cis women and assume that trans women have the same advantages compared to cis women as cis men do. There is scientific evidence that shows that at least in some sports, long enough use of estrogen together with testosterone blockers reduces the athletic performance about the same percentage that is the average difference between the typical male range and the typical female range, or at least enough for the athletic performance to be reasonably within the female range. And I obviously do think that hormone replacement therapy is necessary for a trans woman to be allowed to compete in women's sports. At the moment, however, bans on trans women in sports are based more on politics than on research data. More research is needed, and rulings should be based on data and not on feelings and assumptions. In many conversations around this topic, it seems to me that people are not only against trans women competing because of possible unfair advantage, but also because of the idea that they are men and that is somehow unfair to have them to compete against women regardless of whether there is a real advantage. But trans women are women. I mean, a trans woman was about to be banned from competing in women's category in darts, and even when she was allowed to compete, there were protests against her.
Victoria Monaghan won the national title late last month amid a fiery atmosphere. It came a little over a month after she was initially told she couldn't compete in darts competitions despite satisfying the global body's transgender policy.
How difficult was the tournament? Was it a tough one?
Yeah, there was an added pressure there. There was, being who I am, it made it a little bit more difficult because there was a few voiced opinions there. Not believing that I should be there, but very good players.
So, how does it feel then to make history as the first transgender person to qualify for this? So you are the first, right?
That's correct. Yes, I am the first. It was a little tarnished with a few of the comments that were made, but it's still sinking in. I don't think I've quite realised how big and significant this is.
What exactly would be the unfair advantage a trans woman could have in darts? It's not muscle strength, it's not bone structure, it's not lung capacity, it's not height. So please let me know what it would be. It really seems to be more about ideology than about scientific facts.
Like, I mean, do y'all know how many trans women have won national titles?
One too many.
One. It's Lia Thomas is the only one.
One too many.
If women
too many?
Deep down, people seem to think that there is some male essence and female essence that is unchangeable, even if any real unfair advantage is out of the picture. People say that every trans woman who succeeds takes a spot from a real woman, no matter how fair the competition was. But think about it the other way around. If a trans woman has worked her whole life to make a career in a sport and is talented in it, you suggest that if she is going to medically transition, she should just accept that it's the end of her athletic career, since estrogen does make her slower and weaker, so in most sports she wouldn't be able to compete at the same level in men's category as before. So when saying that she is taking away young women's dreams they have worked their whole lives to achieve, even if there is no real unfair advantage, you are saying that she needs to abandon her dream that she has worked her whole life to achieve. Some people have suggested a separate category for trans athletes, but there are a few issues. One of them being that there simply aren't that many trans athletes. So who would they be competing against? The only other trans person in their sport? Trans people have been allowed in the Olympics since 2004. Have trans women been dominating women's sports since then? No, they have not. Actually, the first transgender athlete to qualify for the Olympic trials in a category different than their sex assigned at birth was Chris Mosier in 2020. Unfortunately, he couldn't finish the race due to an injury.
Hey Chris, how'd you know you'd be fast enough to compete against men?
I didn't.
Or strong enough?
I didn't.
Yeah, but how'd you know the team would accept you?
I didn't.
Or that you'd even be allowed to compete?
I didn't.
That must have been tough. Didn't you ever just want to give up?
Yeah, but I didn't.
He's a trans man, assigned female at birth, competing in men's category.
I'm a runner, triathlete, duathlete, and the first trans man to make a men's US national team.
Chris has a pretty impressive track record, but because he is a trans man and not a trans woman, nobody's bothered by him beating cis guys. And he isn't the only trans man who has successfully competed against cis men on elite level.
My name is Patricio Manuel. I'm from Los Angeles, California, and I'm the first professional male boxer who is transgender. My pro debut was at the Fantasy Springs Casino in Indio, California. There are so many people that have said that it's impossible for someone like me, a trans man, to be able to compete against a non-trans man and win. And I proved them all wrong that night. I walked out of that fight with my first victory, and it was a victory greater than just having my successful pro debut. I think that it challenged a lot of people's assumptions about what people like me are able to do.
While I may not have a strong opinion on the conditions under which trans women should or shouldn't be allowed to compete, what I do have a strong opinion on is that individual trans women should not get hate for competing in women's sports, as long as they have followed the rules of the governing bodies of their sport. If you think they shouldn't be allowed to compete, take your criticism to the organizations that make the rules, not to the individuals who play by those rules. It is horrible to see how much hate and harassment, for example, Lia Thomas has received, even though she didn't make the rules. People claim that she only transitioned so that she could succeed in women's sports. No cisgender man transitions just so that they can dominate women's sports. It takes such a toll on your body and your mind that no one would do it just to win against some women. And if you claim that they do, it's clear that you don't understand what you are talking about. But hey, go ahead and take cross-sex hormones for a year or two, and then we can talk. If you think it's really that easy, and you think it's likely for someone to do that just to win some college competition, go ahead and prove that it's easy. One of Lia's competitors, Riley Gaines, has since made her whole personality about talking shit about Lia in every right-wing media. Some see her as a great advocate for women's rights, But if your way of advocating for women is by talking about your competitor's genitals and trying to expose her private life, it really doesn't come across as anything that petty, except maybe to those who just hate trans people.
Lia Thomas, who used to be Thomas, who went from a man to a woman, is now dating someone that used to be a man that's now a woman, and they consider themselves lesbians.
As confusing as that sounds,
explain
if you could follow that, yes.
Yeah, women who date women often call themselves lesbians. Not that confusing.
So, and this isn't an episode of South Park.
No, this is, I actually had someone send me the girlfriend's Instagram page, to which I obviously looked at. It is in fact a male who has transitioned, so the same type of transgender persons as Lia. Very interesting dynamic, but it's mind-blowing now sitting back, looking at this in front of my eyes and knowing we had to share a locker room with this person.
Are some of the things they do satanic, would you say?
Yes.
Okay. Really? Not surprised by that.
They practice these satanic things based off of the posts and based off of the content that they like on social media. It's very, very just bizarre.
So, vampire drawings and My Chemical Romance lyrics posted 4 years ago? Ooh, satanic. I wonder what that has to do with Lia's athletic career or trans women in sports.
They have bondage all over their bedroom wall.
This is
like 50 Shades of Grey, like wall.
Yeah.
So, adults have some BDSM gear. Again, I have no idea how this information is relevant when advocating for women's sports.
The same day, they actually both went to the hospital to essentially get neutered. They wanted to stop all testosterone production, so they cut off parts of their male parts, but left other parts.
This procedure is called orchiectomy, and it's one of the procedures trans women can choose to have. If Lia has had it, any speculation of her motives to transition is ridiculous. Do you genuinely believe a cis guy will cut off his balls to be allowed in women's sports? Please show me a cis guy who would actually do that. Also, as far as I know, Lia's girlfriend isn't a public person in any way, so even though her Instagram used to be public, bringing her posts into this conversation is questionable at the very least. You can have a fact-based debate about trans women in sports without going out of your way to dig into someone's personal life, or rather your presumptions about it, and to try to vilify them based on things that have nothing to do with their athletic career and that are simply none of your business. Imagine if Lia did the same thing and went in every media outlet that chooses to have her to talk about Riley's genitals and speculate on her sexual practices. Would people think that's completely fine? It's hard to feel sympathy for Riley's cause when she has chosen that the one thing she wants to be remembered for is not being a great swimmer, but being a bad loser who made a whole new career out of hating one individual trans woman.
It's not transphobic to say that you can't change your sex. Sex is down to a chromosomal level, and that's not something that can be changed, and that matters in sports. Your biology, sports is the one area where your sexual chromosomes matter.
It's not transphobic to talk about the biological differences between trans women and cis women, and it's not inherently transphobic to question whether those differences are too significant to allow a fair and meaningful competition between trans and cis women. But it is transphobic to misgender your opponent, clearly with a hurtful intent, and to call her a cheat despite the fact that she followed all the rules and policies. Unless you are one of those who just enjoys bullying and cruelty towards minorities, you shouldn't be okay with attacking individual trans women regardless of your opinion on the actual issue of biological advantages. But I get why she's doing it, because cruelty and targeted hate towards individuals is how you get attention from the right-wing media outlets. A fact-based debate doesn't sell.
Lia, when Lia was ranked 462nd nationally among the men, at best.
Where do they pull this number? Because in the rankings I can find, she was within the top 100 in men's category before starting hormone replacement therapy. So no, she wasn't number 1, but she wasn't a failed male swimmer by any means. The only place where I could find the number 462 is in the rankings of her worst event in the men's category. So they have compared her worst event in the men's category to her best event in the women's. They could have compared her best event in the men's category and said that she was 32nd, but I guess that doesn't fit in their agenda. When it comes to the national rankings, she didn't go to number 1 in the national rankings in the women's category. She won 1 national title in 1 event. This is how her national rankings have progressed. And here are Riley's national rankings for comparison. She could have claimed that she forgot to specify that she is talking about the 200 freestyle, as it was the only event in which she competed against Lia, but in this testimony she specifically referred to the 500 freestyle and still claimed that Lia was ranked 462nd at best, which is simply a lie.
We watched on the side of the pool as Thomas swam to a national title in the 500 freestyle. Previously, Thomas had been ranked 462nd at best in the men's division the year prior.
These facts don't care about your feelings, and they also don't care if they're actually fact.
You know what Lia really deserves an award for? Making all of you interested in women's sports.
So this trophy goes to Lia. Riley, you have to go home empty-handed.
The truth is that people don't care about women's sports. I swear most of you who are now fighting to save women's sports didn't follow or care about women's sports until you saw it as an opportunity to hate on trans people. The right-wing commentators surely didn't care before. And I believe most of you still don't care, but if you do, there are many issues that are more detrimental to women's sports than a couple of successful trans women, such as a massive pay gap between male and female professional athletes. If you actually do care about women's sports, there are plenty of better ways to help them. Watching women's sports and following them is a good start. Bigger audience and wider public interest brings more money into women's sports and more visibility and sponsorship opportunities to female athletes. The issue is that no one cares about women's sports enough to put more money into them in the first place. Competitive sports on higher level concern a relatively small proportion of people, whether they are trans or not, but when it comes to recreational sports, and especially children's sports, I think inclusivity and accessibility are the most important aspects, because the public health benefits of exercising are way more important than having kids compete against each other. But unfortunately, a lot of the legislation against trans people in sports specifically targets trans kids. Kentucky passed a law that essentially banned one middle schooler from playing in a team that wouldn't even exist if she didn't help create it.
Won't somebody please think of...
No.
She's the only known trans athlete in the whole state whom the law affects.
Fisher was one who recruited a ton of 7th grade girls because we hadn't had a team here at Westport for 3 years. I mean, honestly, without her, we would not have had a team because she advocated so hard to get these girls to come out and said like how much fun we're having, and like every single time was like, hey coach, what can I do? How can I help?
Well, after COVID and we were just getting back in, the girls field hockey team barely existed. It was just a thing that Westport had that nobody joined because everybody wanted to play like volleyball or something. But then 3 people signed up. One of them was me, and I tried my very hardest to get the minimum amount of people for the team, and we got that. And I just have made so many friends, and me and my friends have started playing on a league at the YMCA, and that has been extremely fun. We even won our 2nd game. We've lost a lot of games. But that was because we were mostly new to the sport, and we were all getting invested in this really awesome sport. I really don't want this bill to pass because that means I can't play, and it will be extremely detrimental to my mental health as well, because I know that sports is a great way for me to cope with things. Like, it's just a good way for me to cope with things. It's disgusting that this bill is even suggested. It's terrible. terrible, and I've worked really hard and practiced so many hours. I hope you don't vote on this bill, and I hope I can play in 8th grade. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
She has been the core of our team for months. So I said, there's got to be another way. What year do we live in? I mean, it was really heartbreaking.
I was actually on the bus and I got texted from a friend who's also on the team. And I remember being very upset. Like, I really wanted to cry because I was just like, it's not fair.
My eyes started watering because I was really sad because this should not happen to her. And like my mom was crying, like it was just so sad. It was awful.
Imagine believing that you are protecting women's sports by banning one kid from playing. Imagine thinking that this is an important political issue that your legislators need to focus on. Something that does concern everybody, though, are public bathrooms. Trans people have been using bathrooms based on their gender identity forever, but only recently there has started to be some massive hysteria around it. Well, at least trans people who pass have been using bathrooms based on their gender identity. Most trans people will use the bathroom that makes the most sense regarding their gender expression at the moment.
Every time I've went into a restroom at a public place, I've never had a stare. I've never had anyone tell me you don't belong in this restroom. And I've actually accidentally went in a male restroom on accident, not knowing it was a male restroom. And the men were going fucking crazy, like, whoa, whoa, miss, what are you doing in here? Do, what are you doing in here? So you want us to go to the male restroom? That puts us in danger once again.
However, using public bathrooms is difficult to many trans people because of the fear of harassment and assaults. Some avoid using them for the time during their transition when they don't pass or their gender seems ambiguous, which can be from a few months to a few years to forever. And some are too scared to use them even when they fully pass as the gender they identify as, because this debate has made it very clear that trans people's right to pee is less important than cis people's right to not feel slight discomfort about a trans person peeing in the stall next to them.
Shortly after using the girls' restroom, I realized public bathrooms are a place where you go, you privately do your business in a stall, and then wash your hands and leave. Crazy, right? From the way the media talks about it, you think that people are walking around naked.
And I say discomfort because that's what it is. People say it's about women's safety, but there is no evidence that allowing trans people to use the bathroom of their choice would put women in danger. Already in 2017, police chiefs in Texas opposed the bathroom bill because it tried to solve a problem that doesn't exist.
If a bill like this were to be passed, that would pull police officers' time away from combating violent crime into enforcing a bathroom bill, it makes communities less safe.
And I've got news for them. We have yet to find anything that this will prevent, because in truth, this is a purported solution that is in search of a problem, a non-existent problem.
I'm asking legislators, don't do this. Don't pass this unnecessary bill that does nothing to make us safer, that targets thousands of transgender Texans, and that makes our job more complicated.
On the other hand, there is a lot of evidence that restricting bathroom access puts trans people in higher risk of sexual assault and violence.
Each year, 10% of U.S. high school students are sexually assaulted, putting them at risk for major depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and a range of other negative outcomes. We analyzed data from 3,673 transgender and non-binary adolescents, ages 13 to 17, from throughout the United States, one of the largest samples of trans youth ever collected. We found that 19% of transgender girls in our sample had been sexually assaulted in the past year, along with 27% of transgender boys. The results were similar for non-binary youth. We found that youth whose schools said they weren't allowed to use the restrooms and locker rooms that best matched their gender identities were significantly more likely to have been sexually assaulted, ranging from 26% greater risk in transgender boys to 149% greater risk in transgender girls. The only group where we didn't find a significant difference was in non-binary youth assigned a male sex at birth. Our results make clear that sexual assault is a serious health concern for transgender and non-binary youth, and that the school environment may play a role.
People have suggested a third gender-neutral bathroom or changing the gender-neutral single cubicles, and I think both suggestions would be fine, but in the meantime, before public spaces make those changes, trans people still need to pee. Not being able to use public bathrooms can limit a person's social life and possibilities to participate in society, and it can be very isolating. The proposed bathroom bills would also force trans men who were assigned female at birth to women's bathrooms.
They're ramping up and actually passing bathroom bills with harsh criminal penalties, meaning there are places that if I need to go to the restroom, I could go to jail for not using the women's room.
Do you generally not see the problem in forcing masculine-looking trans men with full beards in women's bathrooms? Would it not make you uncomfortable to see them there? People always forget that trans men exist, but they do, and many of them look very manly, and these bills would also affect them.
But a man named Michael Hughes decided a new bill introduced by Republicans in his state was a bridge too far. The Student Physical Privacy Act, as it is known, is intended to have high school students only use locker rooms and bathrooms based on assigned genders at birth. So this is just one of several proposed bathroom bills popping up all across the country aimed at curbing trans people from using bathrooms that correspond with their gender identity. Hughes has responded by taking selfies in women's restrooms to show why he didn't belong in them, and the campaign, which uses the hashtag #WeJustNeedToPee, has gone viral. So Michael, explain, some of these people that are in the images with you, are they friends, or are these people that are caught in a moment of not self-aware that you're taking this picture?
Right, and I'm glad you asked that. I've taken some heat for that. They're all friends or family. We were very careful, immediately upon getting this idea. I was very aware of not wanting to put women in a vulnerable position, so the bathrooms were checked beforehand. The doors were guarded, so we pretty much alleviate any chance of an unsuspecting woman walking in and seeing me in the bathroom.
These bathroom bills basically leave passing trans people with two options: either to break the law and risk ending up in prison, or to obey the law and risk getting assaulted, make other people uncomfortable, have to out themselves just to go to pee, potentially have cops called on them, and end up just wasting their time as well as everyone else's time, possibly including law enforcement, instead of just quickly going to pee. Of course, using public bathrooms is easier to those who pass, but passing is a privilege that not all trans people can ever have. Not all trans people have the money to get all the procedures that they would need to pass, and some people have unchangeable traits that make it harder for them to pass, so it's not just about not trying hard enough or not being committed enough. And your gender identity is valid even if you don't pass. Of course, for many non-binary people, it's even more difficult to find a bathroom where nobody thinks they shouldn't be there. This bathroom hysteria has also led to masculine cis women being harassed in women's bathrooms, as well as trans guys who have specifically been told to use the women's bathroom to be assaulted for doing so.
That's right. Noah Ruiz identifies as a man but was born female, and he says that he was using the women's restroom because the owner of the campground told him to do so. And that's when he says a group of men came after him, and now he, along with his mother, say they want those men charged and arrested.
I have bruises in the back of my head from being punched in the back of the head.
20-year-old Noah Ruiz says it all happened last Sunday, July 3rd at Cross's campground in Camden, Ohio. He says he went to the women's restroom when a female in the stall became upset.
She just started shouting and she was like, "Who the F is in here?" And I replied, "I am." My girlfriend replied, "I am as well." And she was just like, "Well, no man should be in this bathroom. Like, if you're a man, you need to use the man's bathroom and this and that." And I was like, "Well, I'm transgender. Like, I have women body parts, and I was told to use this bathroom."
He says he was walking out, and that's when 3 large men approached him in attack mode, leaving behind several cuts and gashes across his body.
So they grabbed me off the ground, they choked me out, they were just sitting there like, "I'll kill you," and doing all this. And I was like, dude, I'm using the right bathroom. Rick Cross, the owner of this establishment, told me to use this bathroom. I'm following the rules.
Noah says during all the commotion, deputies with the Preble County Sheriff's Office showed up, and he was arrested for disorderly conduct and obstructing official business.
How many more trans people need to get assaulted for using the bathroom those bills would force them to use before people understand how ridiculous they are? Or are you just trying to eradicate transgenderism from public bathrooms entirely? And how many masculine-looking cis women need to be harassed and assaulted for seeming trans before you understand that laws like this don't only hurt trans people?
I just gotten like something fixed in the car and we were driving and I had like really bad cramps, like to the point where I was almost in tears. So we stopped at our local casino so that I could go to the bathroom and my boyfriend could go to the bathroom because he had to pee as well. When I walk in the stall and sit down, like 30 seconds in, I start to hear this lady like ranting and raving about trans people and it and identities and blah blah blah, and I'm like, shit, she's probably talking about me.
It's a boy. It's a child.
So I can hear her talking to like whoever will listen in the bathroom, and I can hear her saying like they shouldn't come out the stall, like this and that, like they need to stay in there.
I'm good. Are you a man or a woman?
Why does that matter?
Well, because you're in the ladies' room.
Okay.
And I have gotten called out several times for being in the men's room.
Okay.
And you're going to be called out for whatever you're doing. So what are you identifying as today?
I don't think that's any of your business.
Okay, it's not. So you're in the ladies' room where I think I need to identify you.
You do not need to identify me.
Is that right? How old are you?
Doesn't matter.
Really? Okay. So we'll wait for the police to come and figure it out.
Okay. Let's wait for the police to come.
Yeah, because this is not the way you play your shit. Go down on the strip and try to do it there. Don't do it up here. This is a suburb. Not allowed. Not allowed.
No one else in the bathroom was helping me. Everyone was just watching, which is unfortunate, but oh well. I think the most upsetting part is the fact that she thought I was a child, a trans child, and was literally attacking me and no one said boo.
Yeah, you think you're going to be a woman? It's okay. And be a man? It's okay. No. Figure out your identity in your bedroom, okay? And then project it on everybody else and we'll accept it. This is not acceptable.
Let's go get security.
Yes, let's
I feel
do
harassed. She's harassing me for being in the bathroom.
What's going on? Well, I'm asking her what her identity is.
It's my girlfriend. It's a full-on woman.
It's your girlfriend, so it's a girl.
Doesn't matter. Step back.
And to the people asking why I didn't tell her what my identity was, it doesn't matter if I'm trans or not. I literally went in there to go to the bathroom, to go pee. So the fact that she followed me into the bathroom thinking that I was a trans child to harass me and bully me out of the stall is unacceptable, because I was literally going to the bathroom, minding my business.
If there was a real, statistically significant risk to women, then it would make sense to have a conversation about it, but there clearly isn't. There is no statistically significant number of cases of a trans woman or a man pretending to be a trans woman attacking women or girls in bathrooms. Don't let the right-wing propaganda fool you into thinking there is, because what they do is they try to find maybe one case and use that to make you believe it's a real risk, just like they did with the Nashville shooter. And there is no statistically disproportionate percentage of successful trans women in women's sports. If you want to protect women or protect children, maybe concentrate on real risks instead of imaginary ones. Transgender people don't want to erase women or cisgender people. Most trans people are just asking you to be reasonable when it comes to issues that will most likely have zero impact in your life ever, but that will directly affect trans people's everyday life, access to reproductive and other necessary healthcare, and ability to work and to participate in society.